Welcome to the Happier and Healthier podcast. I'm your host, Maria Marlowe, and this is a place where we don't rely on good luck or good genes for our health and happiness, but rather we create it with our thoughts and our actions each and every single day. Each week, I'll bring you a thought or a guest that will help you live your happiest and healthiest life. Are you ready? Welcome back to the Happier and Healthier podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Ann Shippey, who is an MD and functional medicine expert. We're going to talk a little bit about autoimmune diseases and how you can use food and lifestyle to reverse them, as well as mold and environmental toxins. She brought up a few things even I was a little surprised about and sad about. My memory foam mattress is one of my favorite things I've been sleeping on for the past probably decade. And she dropped the bomb that it's quite toxic. So she's going to be talking about toxins in the home and how we can minimize them and just how we can clean up our environment to help promote healing. If you've set a goal for yourself to slim down or improve your health, and you need some help getting there, join me for Eat Slim, my 10-week online nutrition and cooking course. It's been repeatedly called life-changing by past participants as you finish the course having a better understanding and appreciation for your body. You'll learn how to tailor your diet to your unique body so that you wake up feeling energized, light, and vibrant. You'll conquer digestive issues, shed weight, get rid of sugar and junk food cravings, and learn how to cook and order healthy foods no matter what the situation. If you've been struggling to find a diet that helps you feel amazing every single day, sign up for Eat Slim at mariamarlowe.com/eat-slim. Past students have told me they got more out of this than working one-on-one with a nutritionist, and that I should be charging double and triple what I am for this course. But I really want to keep this accessible because I want as many people as possible to be able to do this program, so I've capped it at less than $30 a week. So if you're ready to get healthy for good, head to mariamarlowe.com/eat-slim to sign up. So Dr. Shippey, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is one of my favorite conversations.
So first, I have to ask you, you started off as an IBM engineer, and then you did that for a decade before you actually became a doctor. So what prompted you to go to medical school, and then how did you become a functional medicine, not just a regular MD, but then decide to go into functional medicine?
I loved being an engineer. I got to work for IBM, which was a great company, and got to work on really wonderful projects with great people, actually helping to get chemicals out of our manufacturing process. It was one of the big things that I worked on. So it's really exciting, really fun. But then I got very ill. I went on a vacation. I was never the same after that. I went from doctor to doctor. I knew there was something that I could figure out to get better, but I wasn't getting the answers that I needed. I was just getting Band-Aids and lots of testing. So it was before the internet. And I just read everything that I could and then sought out people that were thinking outside the box. So I saw a naturopath, I saw a nutritionist, an acupuncturist, an herbalist. And then I just started trying different diets. And I finally figured out what I needed to do from getting well. And I really was pretty sick. When I talked to people later about what I looked like, they really thought I was dying. You know, my employees and my colleagues were all like, oh my God, what's happening to her? So then once I realized how amazing the body is and that how powerful food is, and even stress and our thoughts, and I decided that I wanted to go to medical school and do medicine differently. And fortunately, I had a chemical engineering degree. Even though I had never had a biology class, I could very quickly get the prerequisites that I needed to get started into med school. And then I had a child in med school and a child in residency. So even though I knew I needed some additional training and insights how to do medicine the way that I knew was possible, it wasn't clear. Functional medicine wasn't quite on the map yet. And so I since I had these two young children, I just went into standard internal medicine for a couple of years. And fortunately, I got sick again so that I could find functional medicine because it was really still pretty obscure. But I found another physician who had done some of the functional medicine training in my search for how to cure my autoimmune disorders instead of taking an immunosuppressants. And then I got up enough courage to open up my own practice, even though I wasn't sure, is anybody really going to want to come see me? So I left a busy internal medicine practice where I kind of knew what medications I need to prescribe or what test I needed to order within like 5 minutes of them telling their story. So then I opened my office and started getting to spend time with people and use the latest technology and testing to see what was really going on with people's biochemistry and physiology, and then find the most holistic way to get better.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. And there's this saying, something about make your mess your message. And so very often healers and people in the wellness space, they didn't grow up healthy. They got sick, they had a big problem, and then had to turn to a holistic way of healing to fix it. And then they go on to share that with others. So wow. So let's talk autoimmune because you brought that up. I think this comes up all the time. I personally have an autoimmune skin condition. I know so many people, so many clients, so many friends, so many people have autoimmune diseases. What is going on with them? And is it possible to reverse them?
Absolutely. And that, I'm really glad that I started out with that particular issue. I developed two autoimmune disorders. I had Sjogren's syndrome. So my mouth and my eyes were getting just so uncomfortable. I was just really getting miserable. I really couldn't have a conversation without having some gum or something in my mouth and my eyes. I just had to be putting drops in all the time. And then I had a antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, so I was at increased risk for having a stroke or heart attack. So, kind of serious stuff. And so what I'm seeing with patients and what I'm seeing in the research is that we really do have an autoimmune epidemic on our hands. And the key things that I see are causing it are our diet. So a lot of times there's an underlying trigger of gluten sensitivity or celiac disease and the associated issues with dairy and other cross-reactive foods, and then environmental toxins. So as you know, one of my favorite topics is toxic mold, but it can be really any toxic substance that the body isn't clearing out optimally, whether it's heavy metals or plastics or pesticides, volatile organic compounds, the fumigants that our food is getting sprayed with. And we're getting so bombarded that the little bits that we're exposed to every day, unless you have a super robust detoxification system, they're building up in people's bodies and then triggering the immune system to be confused and attack itself. And that's basically what autoimmune disorder is. But the exciting thing is you can reverse it. If you figure out what your body needs foundationally and then reduce the triggers, you can watch the autoimmune markers reverse.
Yeah. So, and I know I've heard so many stories. They're like one of the most amazing stories, I think, is Dr. Terry Walls, who reversed her MS, right? So I mention her on the podcast all the time. And a number of people have actually reversed their autoimmune conditions, even though conventional medicine will tell you that you're kind of stuck with them. So let's just go back to, this is another topic that I like to talk about, and I like to talk about it on a regular basis because I feel like people need to hear this over and over again. But you mentioned that the start of autoimmune disease can come from leaky gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
And gluten. So what is your stance on gluten as a whole? Like, I know sometimes people will be like, oh, well, I eat it and I'm fine, or I've always eaten it, right? Or people don't realize some of the symptoms they may or may not be having, right? So what is your stance on gluten and wheat? And do you think it's something that everyone across the board needs to avoid?
I can't believe I'm saying this because, 13, 14 years ago, when I was starting into this realm, I didn't get the magnitude of the gluten. And I was really careful on who I asked to change their diet that significantly. But now with what I've seen in both the literature, in the studies, and in my patients, I really don't think anybody should be eating gluten. unfortunately, it is just inflammatory. And with the world that we live in today, I don't think most people can eat it. The exception would be is if you're traveling to Europe. A lot of people are able to eat their wheat for a short period of time. But what happens is, some people like me, I have a gluten sensitivity and a celiac gene. My body screams at me now when I eat it. So getting the inflammation way down. Finally, there's a trajectory when I do get exposed. Usually it would be accidentally. I would never purposely do it anymore, but I travel a lot, I eat out a lot, I get together with friends. So as careful as I am, periodically I do get exposed. And my body will let me know within 15 or 20 minutes. And that's actually easier than if your body just has a fire going on that you don't have specific symptoms. So some people just get osteoporosis or early dementia or autoimmune disorders. The fire doesn't actually inform them in short enough time frame to know that it really does bother them. So to really know, we have to do very detailed markers to look and see what's going on with the immune system and the different aspects of the gluten molecules or the wheat molecule, and then follow the autoimmune markers or follow the inflammation markers. And sometimes it's just, William Davis has done his research around cardiovascular disease. So some people just get blockages in their heart from it. So because we're seeing such a link with so many different diseases, and then it's very difficult to even get wheat that's not genetically modified or full of glyphosate. I just think there are better foods that we can be putting in our body across the board.
For sure. So yes, I agree with you 100%. And I wanted to hear it from you. Everyone I get on here, I try to get their opinion on this so people can keep hearing it over and over, because I think, we grow up with wheat. It's just such an integral part of our everyday life, even almost every meal, every snack. And it's very hard for people to grasp how unhealthy it is and how much damage it can do. So,
and it really is one of the most powerful things for people to eliminate from their diet to change the trajectory of their health. Like, if there's one thing that I could have most people do, that would be it, is just I find that gluten and dairy both need to come out. Dairy is even harder to talk about because of the casein morphines that make people have so many cravings to the dairy.
Right.
But, so I find that really people need to get both of those out to get that.
To really
in the body.
For sure. Yeah. And that's something I preach. All my recipes are gluten-free and dairy-free to make it a little bit easier. And I think once you get over the hump, it's actually not that hard. Like, you think your life is over, that you can never eat anything again, but actually there's so many things you can eat. There's so many great alternatives. And now more than ever before, like I always tell people, like cheese, vegan cheese, even 5 years ago was so disgusting. And just made from like it was like plastic. It was like eating plastic. But now you can get it actually made from cashews and coconut and real foods, not chemicals and stuff. So people now are luckier than those making the change back then.
Well, and in Austin, we have this little vegan grocery store called Rabbit. It's a big Rabbit grocery store. And oh my gosh, you can go in there and they have like every type of vegan dairy product. And there's so many good options. So when people are making the transition, I'll just have them go and get a whole bunch of different kinds. And then they can pick and choose and find which ones they like, because people get so discouraged if they just go get one and then they don't like it.
Bad. Yeah.
So go get 10 and then pick the one you like the best, and then just keep looking for more, because there's new products that are coming out every week. It's just amazing how that industry is changing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get back. Okay. So autoimmune. So it's a rising epidemic, and food plays a very big part in the reversing of the autoimmune. So can you speak a little bit to that, of what changes and how our diet, or why our diet, plays such a big role?
Yeah. So there's this whole field of research going on called nutrigenomics. So it's how the food, it's not just the calories that we burn to run our physiology, but it's information to our genes on how to behave. So we can dramatically impact how our biochemistry and physiology manifests by putting in foods that are very low inflammation and actually support our positive gene expression, and then avoid the ones that are going to increase inflammation. So what I say over and over is gluten and dairy and grains, For some people, beans and some of the other lectin foods are important, especially with autoimmune conditions. But generally, gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free, and meticulously. Like even a little bit of it, we now know that the mechanisms are very similar to what happens with a cold and flu exposure. So it's just a few molecules that cause a major cascade in the immune system response. And then by including a lot of the phytonutrients, so the brightly colored fruits and vegetables, especially the vegetables, help the genes actually do a better job of managing inflammation and managing detoxification. So it's so powerful for really setting up the infrastructure that we need, the foundation to be able to heal.
And so I know you talk about the paleo diet as a great option. So would you say paleo diet is a great for anyone who's listening who has an autoimmune condition, obviously working with a practitioner, but a paleo diet or the AIP diet as well, right?
Right. So I find that not everybody has to go to the extreme of the AIP if they're doing the gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free meticulously. So a lot of times with my patients, we'll try that first. And then if we don't see the autoimmune markers budging, coming down over a period of a few months, then we'll try the AIP. It's so restricted, taking out the nightshades and the nuts and the eggs. It makes gluten-free, dairy-free, grain-free look easy, right? But for people that are really motivated they don't care. Like, I just want to have the fastest path. I do find the AIP is the fastest.
And how long, in your experience, does it usually take for someone to really see results and really have their condition go into remission following a paleo or AIP diet?
Mm-hmm. So if the dietary things are the core reason that they've gone off, it's not that long. They can feel significantly better within a couple months. It might be a year to fully recover and see the autoimmune markers come down. If there's also a huge environmental component, then they can see progress, but not really get to the full recovery until we've addressed the environmental toxicity issues.
So let's talk a little bit about environment. I know that you're a big proponent of a chemical-free, toxin-free life. So what would be I know we mentioned mold. What are some of the environmental factors that may be slowing down our healing?
Mm-hmm. So the heavy metals are a big one. If we're eating a lot of fish, almost everybody that I see that's on a very pescatarian diet has high both mercury and aluminum, even if they're eating pretty carefully, watching the EWG list for the safest seafood, it's still enough of an exposure that we see that. So heavy metals are a big one. Plastics. So we're so used to having high amounts of plastic in our day-to-day lifestyle to make everything easy that a lot of times we don't even see it. Microwaving in plastic, drinking from plastic water bottles, anything that we're putting on our skin, a lot of times can have things like phthalates and triclosan. So we want to have as natural skincare as possible. The acrylic nails and nail polish are also big factors. And
what about gel nail polish?
I don't really know for sure, but I've been trying to learn to play the guitar, so I'm just cutting my nails off really short and using that as an excuse to not have pretty nails. Because for me, that's one of the things that it's just not worth it, because I don't think the data's in yet on the gel nails, and it still has an odor to me. And
I resisted them for so long. Like literally, I only started using gel earlier this year, and then I was obsessed with it because it really does not crack for 3 weeks, and I'm always cooking and using them. So I did it probably 3 times. And let me just tell you, my nails were ruined. Paper thin. They hurt to be touched. They were just awful. So never again. But I'm sure it's not great for your nail health.
So this is a great time to have this conversation, because there are a few things that I do that I know are not ideal. I started going gray in my 30s, and I don't want to be gray yet. Both my parents were early gray as well, so I didn't have a shot, right? So I do color my hair, and I use the healthiest color that I can find, but I'm not willing to give it up. So when I go to do the coloring, I do a detox bath that we have on our website. And then I also will hop in the sauna and I'll do some extra liposomal glutathione to try to mitigate it. And then, I'm doing all my other things on a day in, day out basis to help to open up the spigots so that things don't build up in my body. So
Yeah,
I don't want people to feel like they have to be perfect. They just need to address the things that they do have some control over. And then when they make a decision to do something like, if you had something where you were having pictures taken or something like that, and you did want to have pretty nails, and, go ahead and do it, but then you try to reduce the impact.
exactly. I'm 100% on board with you there. And that was my reasoning. Like, oh, I'm so healthy. I don't have any other toxins anywhere, and like, let me do it. But yeah, so I think that as long as whatever you have control over, just choose the best that you can. And here and there, your modern life, you're going to be exposed to toxins, but as long as you're, doing the best that you can, your body is very resilient.
And I just want to increase awareness to those things that could be really impacting us that we don't even realize. Like I had a patient a couple of years ago that it was just part of what their family did. If people got sick, they ran around with a Lysol bottle and they even sprayed their pillows. And she's smart. And we'd already been talking about toxicity, but it just didn't occur to her because it was so ingrained in her, how she handled things. So look for things like that you're buying or you're using that you might not even think of being toxic, and then look for the alternate ways to accomplish the same mission.
A quick break from this episode to share with you an amazing opportunity. Are you interested in turning your passion for health and wellness into a career that helps hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people live healthier? If so, consider becoming a holistic health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, the original and top health coach certification program. I studied there in 2012, and it completely changed my career path and life. I went from an uninspiring job in finance to an exciting, fulfilling, and rewarding career as a full-time health coach. The program is offered as a 1-year or accelerated 6-month course, and it teaches you a mix of nutrition, coaching, and business. They have some of the top teachers, including Dr. Walter Willett, who was the chair of Harvard's nutrition department for 26 years, Dr. Marion Nestle, a professor at NYU and author of one of my favorite books, Food Politics, Dr. Mark Hyman, who is the medical director at the Cleveland Clinic's Center for Functional Medicine, Dr. Andrew Weil, Deepak Chopra, Gabby Bernstein, and so many more. Millions of people are suffering from diet-related illnesses, and I truly believe the world needs more health coaches. That's why I've teamed up with IIN to offer an incredible opportunity to make studying there even easier. You'll get $1,500 off tuition, plus one-on-one mentoring with me, plus you'll be added to my private Facebook mentorship group where you can connect with other students and grads and also practice with them. To get your 3 bonuses, simply email me at maria@mariamarlowe.com. That's MariaMarlowe.com with the subject IIN, and I'll personally send you back the email that will allow you to get all of these amazing bonuses. If you feel called to explore or start a career in health and wellness, definitely reach out. So let's also talk about mold, because I know I feel like just recently in the last year or so, this is starting to become an issue or a topic that we're talking more and more about, because more and more people are coming out and saying, oh, I had, mold poisoning or mold toxicity and it ruined my life, right? So a lot of like prominent doctors, wellness people. So what's the deal with mold? Why is it so common? And how do we know to even check for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of this is a little bit tricky. So we're on the cutting edge. I kind of describe it as with mold, we're kind of where we were with bacteria when we were just discovering microscopes. So we're just finally getting the technology to be able to look for it. We're seeing a lot of it because of the way that the building technology has changed since the 70s, where buildings are being built very tightly and they're really trying to conserve money. There's less science that's gone into the building envelope to be able to decrease humidity. And then the workmanship has really gone downhill. It's less of an artisan, people really making sure that every little flashing's done properly on every window and every little thing is caulked. And then we have all these disasters that are happening. So all of the flooding that's really affected almost every part of the country, right? That really stress test the buildings. If there is any opportunity for water intrusion, these huge storms are going to find it. And unfortunately, a lot of times the water intrusion is never even obvious. It's happened along a water plane. There's mold along a wall, but it's not enough to get through the paint to show that there was even water there. Had this happen over and over and over again. And then I think the mold itself is getting more toxic. So a lot of times, even physicians, they kind of put mold into two different categories. One is people are allergic to it and it can cause asthma. And number two is that immunocompromised people can get infections from it. And actually be deadly. Like that's one of the leading causes for transplant patients to die is when a mold has had a party and just kind of taken over their body. They don't realize, most people don't realize that the main issue with mold that's so dangerous are the toxins that they make. So mold makes toxins called mycotoxins and MVOCs. The mycotoxins you can't smell, you can't see, and a lot of them we can't even test for. And some of them are so toxic that they're used for biological warfare, or they can't be used for chemotherapy. There are studies where they've looked at some of the toxins thinking that they would be good chemotherapy agents, but they make people too sick. And so if you think about chemotherapy and how sick people get, it's even too much for that. The MVOCs, a lot of times you can smell, like it's that musty sense that you get when you walk into some older buildings or basements, that kind of thing. And they have a whole different realm of the types of injury that they cause. So there's a lot of research now that's been done on mycotoxins because of animals being exposed to them in the feed. So in the corn and grains and that kind of thing. And it's a huge industry issue for raising animals because it affects their reproductivity, it affects their immune systems, they get a lot of infections, and it affects their weight gain. So then there's, in the lab testing that happens that shows that they do direct damage to DNA, they increase the risk for cancer, for Alzheimer's disease, autism. Like we're just seeing an explosion of the different effects of different mycotoxins in the human population.
Yeah, I just feel like more and more people hearing that they have mold, and even myself. So my blood markers, of course, I feel like I have everything, right? Because so I had, high levels in my blood, and I'm trying to think back. I'm like, I've lived in apartment buildings, for a decade. Like, how could I have mold? And then I remembered about 5 years ago, it was a very, very cold winter, maybe more than 5 years ago, and one of the heater broke and spewed water all into another room. And then, they cleaned it up and everything, but there was one floorboard that was always like, popping up. And so at the time, I didn't think anything of it. And, you fast forward 5 years and it's like, okay, what do you do now? Now you can only just repair, even though I'm not in that environment anymore, right? Your body actually needs to detox. It's not going to detox on its own.
Right.
So for someone who has mold, how would someone test for mold? Should they do? What should be the first step?
Well, first I want to say, because this is going to be a lot of terminology that most people won't be familiar with, is that we have a handout. So people can go to AnnShippyMD.com/mold, but you can put it in your show notes so that they don't have to be rushing around trying to understand what I'm saying. It'll be all written out. So we can test the environment for some molds, not everything. So if the test is negative, it doesn't totally rule that out. And we can check the human body for some. So in the environment, the best way to test is with dust. A lot of mold inspectors will come in and they'll do air samples for mold spores. And the most problematic molds don't send out very many spores, so it can look like everything's fine. So it's really important to, there are two different companies that I do to test the dust. So the first is to look at it uses DNA to look for about 45 different molds. And then another technology to look for about 12 different mycotoxins. So if you have any of those, then it's very suspicious that there's a mold issue. And then there are two different labs that I use to look for the mycotoxins in the patient. So that one would be Great Plains Laboratory and Real Time Laboratory. And I like to use them both because Real Time does some that, and they're the company that I've used the longest. And then the other one has more toxins that they can test for. So when we look at both of them, and we get a much better picture of how big the exposure is and how serious it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people don't realize, well, one, because mold is not like it's not like the cold or the flu where people kind of know the symptoms. I feel like with mold, people don't realize and they'll brush off the symptoms like, oh, I just feel tired, or, oh, whatever. You blame your symptoms on something else without realizing that there is this larger problem. So when there is mold in the body, why is it so important that we get it out and detox as quickly as possible?
It may not be as quickly as possible. It's really at the rate that your body can handle it without flooding it. I describe it as like a series of dams. If you open up one dam too quickly and you don't have the others opened up, then you can actually make yourself sicker. So it's like opening up enough that the dam's all in parallel. So what happens is if you don't get the toxins out, you're going to impact your risk for having more problems later. So it's like your barrel fills up and you're more likely to get Alzheimer's or get cancer or get autoimmune disorders, get heart disease. It's really getting linked with a lot of these serious illnesses. And it's really difficult if you are sick to fully recover without helping your body to eliminate them. So you want to be doing things like taking liposomal glutathione and then having a great diet that's giving you a lot of the phytonutrients that help your liver be supported, as well as liver supplements. And then most people have some mitochondrial impairment that happens when they start having symptoms because the mycotoxins actually injure the mitochondria. So those are the organelles inside the cell that make energy. And so a lot of times giving special forms of CoQ10 and nicotinamide D-riboside, carnitine and D-ribose, PQQ can all really help the body to have the fuel to do the detox. And then the binders are just so important. And everybody's a little different on what binders they tolerate the best, because if you have a tendency to get constipated at all, you can really close off one of those dams and flood your system and not get the toxins out properly. So things like clay and charcoal, something called modified citrus pectin, and certain forms of silica can be extremely effective. I'm not a fan of the cholestyramine or Welchol. I think most people do a better job with the natural binders than the medications, and are less likely to pull out the minerals that are critical for running everything properly if you use these other type of binders instead.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of talk about clay and binders now. Again, I guess also because of the increase in toxicity and the increase in mold and all these issues. So I'm curious with the clay, if you have a favorite clay or a favorite brand or anything like that.
Yeah, just for plain clay, I use a company called Premier Research. There are supplements called MediClay. And then Research Botanicals has a combination of charcoal and clay that I really love. It's called GI Detox Charcoal.
Awesome.
And just start slow and then gradually build up. More isn't necessarily better. Just see how your body responds and then gradually get it up to an amount that feels right for you.
Right. And you also mentioned the sauna earlier for when you're trying to detox from things in the environment. So can you talk a little bit about saunas, like what type of sauna and why someone might want to do that regularly?
So our skin is one of our best detox organs. And unfortunately, it's also one of the main ways that the toxins come in. So we have to be careful what we put on our skin too. But the sauna can really, especially the infrared saunas, can really increase the release of the toxins from the subcutaneous tissues and then allow it to come out in the sweat. So you really want to start slow again. If you overdo it, you're going to blood your system. If you don't have a sauna at home and you go spend, pay for 30 minutes and it still may be better to just start with 10 or 15 than feeling like, oh my God, I got to use the whole 30. Just really listen to your body when it's time to get out. Don't override that, or you may have the dam overflowing, right? And then make sure that you rinse off as soon as you can afterwards. Not all the sauna places have a shower, but definitely, wipe off the best you can and then hop in the shower as soon as you can so that you don't reabsorb the toxins. The other thing that I really love are the hyperbarics. If you have access to hyperbarics, it can make a huge difference in helping you to detoxify quickly and effectively. And then it also increases your stem cell production, so it helps you to do repair more quickly as well.
Yeah. So you're talking about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are usually, I feel like they're a little bit harder to find. They're sometimes at hospitals, but there's not that many. I mean, as far as I know, at least in New York, like hyperbaric bars, like there are sauna bars.
Because the research is increasing so much, especially for traumatic brain injuries, there are more and more centers opening up on a regular basis. So just keep your eyes out. They're not cheap to purchase, but you can get some of the lower atmosphere saunas if you have room for it and the finances for it. I think that the bigger units that have more capacity for higher atmospheres work a little bit better, but still it's all in a positive direction.
Yeah. And I want to circle back because you mentioned with the infrared to start slowly. And I know there's a trend now to have infrared yoga classes, which are 60 minutes or 90 minutes. So for the average person, do you think that's okay? Do you think it's too much?
Go slow, especially if you're pretty toxic, start slow because you don't want to end up doing more harm than good. So you might just go to the first 15, 20 minutes, see how you feel. And then the next time you go a little bit longer and work up to the longer ones. I think they're a great idea. Just start slow.
Be careful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So any tips or advice for our listeners to sort of toxin proof their home? I know you mentioned a couple things, but any just tips or things that you do that will just help us have a toxin-free environment?
Yeah,
or minimized.
Yeah, I think running a HEPA filter in your bedroom at night is a great idea. So I like the IQ Air or Austin Air. Those are the two that I've seen work the best, just to get the cleanest air that you can while your body's detoxifying at night. And then a clean mattress. If you are getting a new mattress, make sure you get a natural mattress. I can't tell you how many people I've seen over the years that part of their turning point in getting sick was when they got a new mattress that wasn't a non-toxic one. So there are great resources for how to get the cotton, natural latex, that kind of thing, because the mattresses, especially the memory foam, can release a lot of toxins to absorb through your skin and through your lungs at night. Also, if you're buying new furniture, new carpeting, new paint, get the lowest toxicity materials that you can. They can really, really make a difference. I personally had, because I'm so affected by mold, I felt like it's been a lower risk to be in a new construction, and be exposed to a little bit of outgassing until the last place that I lived in before this one. It was so tightly filled and it wasn't the lowest toxicity materials. And it really did give me a wake-up call on how critical that is. And then, if you're in more of a remote environment and you can open up your house, and you think it's a pretty clean area, there's not a lot of agriculture where they're spraying a lot of pesticides, or there's not a corporation close by that's potentially pumping chemicals into the air, definitely air out your house as much as you can. New cars are also notorious for having a lot of outgassing. So if you do have that new car smell, definitely air that out every time you get in it.
Yeah, those are all great tips. And some of them you just don't even think of, like the mattress. And like, you're like, oh, memory foam mattress is great. And a mattress you keep, right, for 10 years or for a long time. And you really have no idea the chemicals that are used to make these things and how they're affecting us. And you brought up a point. Certain people are more susceptible to these toxins than others, right? So you could have a couple living together and one completely affected by all the chemicals in the apartment and the other oblivious, like completely fine. So it's really important, that one, we take people seriously and we don't think they're crazy or being a hypochondriac. And two, that we do really look at the environment and understand that different people are affected differently by it.
Yeah, and when there have been studies that look at a particular chemical or metal, it's like a bell-shaped curve. There are some people that at very low doses are affected and others that are not affected until high dose. But the bottom line is that if for most of these toxins, if you get enough exposure, at some time you will get sick. So we should all, especially if you're totally healthy, take the precautions now. Don't wait till you get sick or one of your loved ones gets sick. Do the work now.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you have any rituals or things that you do daily. Like, what is part of your daily wellness rituals?
Yeah, so I find that I need to do something like a sauna, my Medi body bath, or a hyperbaric on a week, at least once a week. That just really gives me a boost. I also do a lot with meditation and neurofeedback because my system, because of all it's gone through, can really get into that limbic fight or flight mode pretty easily, which then dramatically impacts my body's ability to deal with all of this and heal because it's more focused on running from the tiger than detoxing and healing, right? So that's been really, really critical for me. And then I have a number of supplements that I know that they help me to keep my head above water much more effectively. And one of those is liposomal glutathione. Like that, I've become a liposomal glutathione connoisseur. Just trying different brands that are out there and seeing what really works the best. So I've got a couple of my favorites there. And then doing some of the binders and the mitochondrial support is huge for me. There's a supplement called MitoQ that I love, and then some D-ribose and some special carnitine that I really like. So I'm high maintenance.
It's all good.
But it makes a huge difference. I feel better now in many ways than I even felt at my 30s. So
yeah, we have to take care of ourselves because if we don't, no one else is going to do it. And if these are the things that help you feel better and have energy and be in a great mood, then why not?
Right. And get to, be fully present and energized to help my patients.
Right.
And hold that space for them that even if they feel like they're so sick, there's no hope, that they really can get better.
Yeah. And that I think is another thing that I love to, remind people of is that getting healthier isn't really only just so that you feel physically better, but it's so that you're present in your life and that you can actually enjoy your activities, be more productive at work, be more present to your family and your friends. And that's really what makes all the supplements and the going to saunas and chambers and oxygen chambers, all this stuff, that's what makes it really worth it.
It really does. That's and feeling confident that I'm going to stay healthy. After having had multiple bouts with my body breaking down, I really do want to be doing the most important things that I can do most days to stay in this place of being my best self and being able to contribute the most.
Right. So if there's just one tip or piece of advice you could leave our listeners with to live a happier and healthier life, what would that be?
The most important thing I find is that inner conversation, like how loving and kind we're being with ourselves each day. So I think a lot of times the inner conversations are a lot harsher than how we'd let anybody else speak to us. So being able to recognize that when that chatter is going on, or we're being kind of hard on ourselves, pressing the pause button and just consciously shifting over to being kind and loving with ourselves. And that it's so important, again, from an epigenetic standpoint, like how our bodies are the information that our bodies have on what it needs to do and how to run, it has tremendous impacts to be kind and loving with ourselves.
I love that. Yeah, you could eat all the kale and broccoli, but if you're being very mean in your head, if you have bad thoughts, negative thoughts, it's just, you're never going to truly be healthy.
And I find that that's so common. Like, it's just part of that. I think it's part of the survival mechanism, really helping us to know what to do, but it does get kind of harsh sometimes. So I think it's pretty ubiquitous, but it is possible to change it just by being aware of it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And where can people find more? Where should they look for you to find you?
So AnnShippeyMD.com is the website. And the mold handout for people that want to learn more about that is AnnShippeyMD.com/mold. And then we have a lot of good information that we're putting out on Instagram and Facebook most days to help fill in some of those gaps of what we can all be doing.
Awesome. And I will link to all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for sharing your insight today. I'm sure our listeners learned a ton.
Thanks for having me. That was fun.